Hey guys, welcome to Algebra 2, Lesson 1A.4, Solving Quadratics by Completing the Square. So when we complete the square, there's a list of steps here you can see. I'm not going to read through them. We're going to kind of talk through it as we go through each example. But there's a couple things you want to be sure of. Number one, make sure your A term, or the leading coefficient, is 1. So that's the term in front of the x squared, and that your B term, or the number in front of the x, is even. So you might remember this process. I know you guys did a lot in geometry, especially in the circle unit. So let's jump right into it. Number one, let's test. Is the A term 1? Yes, it is. Is the B term even? Yes, it is. So what do we do first? Well, we are going to subtract 7 from both sides. All right, and if we do that, we get x squared minus 6x, leave yourself some room, equals negative 7. The next step is the critical step to completing the square. We take this B term, we divide it by 2. Then we take that number and we square it. And that is the number we add to both sides. It's critical that you add it to both sides, because obviously if you just add it to one side, you mess with the balance of the equation. So I'm going to add 9 here, I'm going to add 9 there. The rest is pretty simple. On the left side, I'll do this the long way, the first example, then after this you'll see the pattern, it goes much quicker. I factor this trinomial. Well, what's nice about it, signs are the same, both negative. What numbers multiply to 9 combined to 6? Well, that's 3 and 3. So it becomes x minus 3 times x minus 3. On the other side, a negative 7 plus 9 is 2. Now, this can be rewritten as x minus 3 squared equals 2. And this will always work. That's the whole point of completing the square, is that when you take half of the B term and square it and then add it to both sides, you get two identical factors that can be then written as that factor squared. Now, from here on out, we use the square root method when solving. I'm going to take the square root of both sides, which will just give me an x plus 3 on the left side. But remember, when solving an equation and you take the square root of both sides, you have to include a plus or minus in this result here. So that'll give me plus or minus square root 2. And then the last thing to do to both sides is subtract 3. And when we do that, I get x equals negative 3 plus or minus square root 2. You have two roots here, remember. One of them is negative 3 plus square root 2. The other one is negative 3 minus square root 2. So we do have two roots there. And what's nice about this one, the radical is already simplified. Okay, let's apply the same concept to the next example. First, do we have a leading coefficient of 1? Yep. Is B even? Yes. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides. All right, that gives me x squared minus 4x, leave yourself room, equals positive 6. Now I take this B term, divide it by 2, and then take that and square it. That is what you're going to add to both sides. So plus 4 here, plus 4 there. Now, I'm going to start doing this a little bit quicker. This would be x minus 2, but I want to write it as x minus 2 squared. So we can start becoming a little bit more efficient when doing this. 6 plus 4 is 10. Now we take the square root of both sides, and I get x minus 2 here. I get plus or minus square root 10. And then lastly, add 2 to both sides. So you can see that these actually are pretty quick. So that's 2 plus or minus square root 10. And you cannot simplify square root 10. That's all we can do. Number 3. Leading coefficient's 1, B term is even, so we have to add this to both sides. Get that over on the other side. X squared plus 2x, leave yourself room, equals positive 23. Now I'm going to take this B term, divide it by 2, so that's 1, and 1 squared is just 1. That's what we add to both sides. Okay? Now, this factors nicely, signs are the same, both positive, factors of 1 are 1 and 1. So I end up getting x plus 1 squared equals 24. Now we take the square root of both sides, and I get x plus 1 equals plus or minus square root 24. Subtract the 1. Now, before I circle this, notice 24. It's a little bit bigger of a number. 4 goes into 24, so I can actually simplify that radical. I'll break this up to square root 4, square root 6, and the square root of 4 is just 2. So my simplified answer would be negative 1 plus or minus 2 square root 6. Number 4. Do your checks. Yep, leading coefficient's 1. That's even. Let's subtract 9 from both sides. So I get x squared minus 10x. Leave yourself room, equals negative 9. Next, I'm going to take this b term. Divide it by 2, 5. Take that and square it, 25. That's what you add to both sides. Okay, so let's do that. Plus 25, plus 25. Now this factors x minus 5 squared, right? It's always going to be the square root of this number. That's why we complete the square. And the signs are always going to be the same, and they're both whatever this sign is here. So that's why it's a minus. And on the other side, we have a negative 9 plus 25. So let's see, what is that? 16. Take the square root of both sides. Okay, now this is kind of interesting. I get x minus 5 equals, well, I can take the square root of 16. That's just 4. Don't forget your plus or minus. Okay. Now I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So what that looks like is x equals 5 plus or minus 4. But I'm not going to leave this as my answer. There's no radical over here, so I can actually combine these. Remember, this gives us 2 different roots. One of them is going to be 5 plus 4. The other one's going to be 5 minus 4. So x equals 9 and x equals 1. Now, when we go through completing the square and you notice your answers are integers, that just means we could have factored this original trinomial. And as we do something over and over again, sometimes we forget the other methods. But if you notice here, this would factor to x minus 9 and x minus 1. And then I get x equals 9, x equals 1. So the directions told us to do completing the square, so we did, but this one actually would have factored. None of the other ones would have because you end up with radicals in your roots. All right, let's just practice a few more. If you've got this, you might not need the rest of these notes, but I'm just going to go through here for those of you that want a little extra practice. So I might go a little bit quicker here. Checking, that's a 1. That's even, so we can complete the square. Let's get rid of this 7 first, though. Add it to both sides. X squared plus 2x equals 7. Next, you take half of that, and then you square it. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides. Now this factors nicely. X plus 1 squared. 7 plus 1 is 8. We now take the square root of both sides, and I get x plus 1 equals plus or minus square root 8. Subtract 1, so I get negative 1 plus or minus square root 8. And we can simplify this. So I have square root 4, square root 2. Square root 4 is 2. So your final answer would be x equals negative 1 plus or minus 2 radical 2. Number 6, yep, leading coefficient of 1. That's even. Let's add 23 to both sides. All right, so we've got x squared plus 6x equals 23. We're going to take half of that, which is 3, and square it. That's 9. So I'll add 9 to both sides. So now this factors to x plus 3 and x plus 3, or x plus 3 squared. 23 plus 9 is 32. Take the square root of both sides. X plus 3 equals plus or minus square root 32. Subtract 3. So negative 3 plus or minus square root 32. And then all we have to do is simplify that square root 32. 16 actually is the largest perfect square that goes into that, and the square root of 16 is 4. So now I get x equals -3 plus or minus 4 square root 2. All right, last two. 7, do your checks. Leading coefficient's 1, 14 is even. Let's subtract 38 from both sides. Number's a little bit bigger here, 14. So I divide that by 2, that's 7. I square that, that's 49. So I need to add 49 to both sides. X squared minus 14x plus 49 factors to x minus 7 squared. Negative 38 and 49, what is that, 11? Now we square root both sides. And that gives me x minus 7 equals plus or minus square root 11. I like square root 11 because I know I can't simplify it. So all I have to do now is add 7 to both sides. 7 plus or minus square root 11. And number 8, our final one. Leading coefficient's 1, 6 is even. I just need to add 3 to both sides to start it. So I have x squared minus 6x equals 3. Half of 6 is 3. 3 squared is 9. I will add 9 to both sides. This factors nicely. X minus 3 squared. 3 and 9 is a 12. We then take the square root of both sides. So x minus 3 equals plus or minus square root 12, which I know I'll simplify here in a second. Add 3 over. 3 plus or minus square root 12. Let's see, 4 goes in here. 3 times square root of 4 is 2. So our final answer, our two roots, would be x equals 3 plus or minus 2 radical 3. All right, so that completing the squared lesson. As usual, guys, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out or come in for extra help. Thanks a lot for watching.